Brothers and sisters, today I want to discuss a topic that has recently caused me to reflect. I recently saw a woman on her YouTube channel explaining that women can preach publicly. This led me to examine the Bible's teachings on women's roles within the church and explore its guidance on this matter. Today, we'll look at how the Bible defines preaching, consider the roles of women in the church, and examine the few exceptions recorded in Scripture. Introduction: Fundamental Biblical Principles. First, let's understand some basic biblical teachings on this issue. Paul clearly states in 1 Timothy 2:12, "I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man, she must be quiet." In 1 Corinthians 14:34-35, Paul also says, "Women should remain silent in the churches. They are not allowed to speak, but must be in submission, as the law says." These verses have been widely interpreted in Christian tradition to mean that women should not take on the responsibility of public preaching in church, particularly in gatherings with both men and women. One reason behind this teaching is the importance of order. Paul emphasizes the church's need for order and authority, urging believers to honor God's design and to follow the roles He has assigned. This is not only for the church's harmony but also to remind believers to be obedient to God's arrangements. Exceptions: the roles of Deborah and Anna. However, there are some exceptions recorded in the Bible. In Judges 4:4-9, Deborah is described as a judge and prophetess who led the people of Israel. This was a unique situation when she appointed Barak to lead the battle. Barak refused to go unless Deborah accompanied him, indicating a lack of willing, faithful male leadership at that time. Thus, God raised up Deborah to lead the people. In the New Testament, Luke 2:36-38 describes Anna, a prophetess who testified publicly about the coming of the Messiah. However, Anna's sharing was more of a testimony or proclamation, not authoritative public preaching. Her actions differed from formal preaching in today's worship settings. Supportive roles in the church: Priscilla, Phoebe, Euodia, and Syntyche. Several women in the Bible, though not publicly preaching, held important roles within the church. Most of them contributed through supportive and instructive roles that helped the church grow. Priscilla. Alongside her husband Aquila, Priscilla taught a young preacher named Apollos. According to Acts 18:26, Priscilla and Aquila invited Apollos to their home to explain the way of God more accurately. This instruction took place privately, not publicly, and Priscilla taught alongside her husband rather than taking on the role of public preaching alone. Phoebe. In Romans 16:1-2, Paul mentions Phoebe as a deacon of the church and calls her a benefactor of many. Phoebe's role in the church was mainly supportive and service-oriented. Her work did not involve public preaching but rather assisting the church through her actions and service. Euodia and Syntyche. In Philippians 4:2-3, Paul mentions Euodia and Syntyche, two women who contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, and he asks the church to help them. This indicates their involvement in the gospel's advancement, but Paul does not record them preaching publicly. Instead, he emphasizes their cooperative spirit in church ministry and the gospel. These examples show that while these women played significant roles in the church, their service was primarily in support, assistance, or private teaching, not public preaching. The teaching on head covering, symbolizing humility and submission. In the New Testament, Paul instructs women to cover their heads while praying or prophesying in 1 Corinthians 11:5, but every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. In that cultural context, head covering symbolized humility and submission. Women in public settings, when praying or speaking, were expected to cover their heads to show respect for God's order. This practice emphasizes that a woman's role in the church is to be supportive and submissive, even when speaking in exceptional cases, showing reverence and humility that respects the established order of the church. Conclusion: application in today's church. Based on these biblical principles, we should be cautious about women taking on public preaching roles today. According to the Bible, women may speak in exceptional situations, but only when there is a lack of qualified male leadership within the church. Additionally, if they do speak, they should follow Paul's teaching on head covering as a sign of humility and submission. In summary, the Bible's general stance is that women should not preach publicly in church unless there are clear, exceptional reasons for doing so, and even then, it should follow the principle of head covering. These teachings are not merely cultural but reflect God's order to ensure the church's harmony and stability. Therefore, if a woman preaches on a public platform today, she should explain her reason for doing so, such as the lack of qualified men, and be mindful to approach this responsibility with a humble and submissive heart. Brothers and sisters, we should seek a comprehensive understanding of the Bible, respect God's design, and humbly consider our roles within the church. I hope today's message helps us better understand the Bible's guidance on women preaching, and may we all submit to God's order and glorify Him in our respective roles. Thank you for listening.